all national eyes on the great state of Georgia as our gubernatorial race heats up. Last week, we had on the sole Democratic candidate, Stacey Abrams. Last night, our Republican governor, Brian Kemp, joined us. And tonight, for the very first time, we are welcoming former U.S. Senator David Perdue, who is the front-runner challenger to get the Republican nomination. David Perdue, welcome to Word on the Street.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, let's jump right into it, shall we? First off, the AJC released a primary election poll today, has current Governor Brian Kemp leading you 53% to 27%, which of course would mean no runoff. That was out of 886 likely Republican primary voters. What are your thoughts when you see polls like that?
Not much. You know, in 2014, these same pollsters had me down 10 points and we won by 8. That's an 18-point error. I mean, these polls right now are really it's very difficult to pick up what voters are actually going to do in a primary like this. They're picking up a lot of people that will not vote in the primary. Only about one of 3 Republicans will actually vote in the primary. There's a big gap between what any of these polls are saying and what I'm seeing out in the state as I run around the state. The mood out there is very, very somber. They're very concerned about how their governor has sold them out and turned our state elections over to the Democrats and cost us a Senate majority in the United States Senate. But it goes beyond that. So there's a real wide gap. I don't spend a lot of time worrying about that. What I'm really focused on is giving people a choice, making sure they know how important it is for them to get out and vote.
You are fresh off of a very spirited, that's the best word I'm going to use for now, a debate with current Governor Brian Kemp this past Sunday. Now, you spoke a lot, and anybody who follows your platform understands that you have been talking about a stolen election. For voters like myself and others who have seen you lay it out, whether we agree with it or not, can you tell us why a past stolen election would be relevant for Georgia voters as we head to the polls this year?
Well, the first thing is any voter should want the truth to come out, and that's what has not happened right now. Most of the national media has already predetermined that nothing happened here, in contrast to a court case where a judge actually in the state of Georgia has ruled that the evidence was compelling and has ruled to release the ballots. Now, I have taken that case up because the judge actually said in that case that he dismissed it because they said voters don't have legal standing. I've taken it up now as a candidate, and we'll see. But we have a governor who has said that, well, look, we always have voter fraud in Georgia. And I was shocked by that. If we have voter fraud in Georgia, then why in the world have we not had any prosecutions? Look, people who vote want to know that their vote is going to count and be accounted for properly. They want to make sure it never happens again what happened in 2020. And look, laws have been changed in Georgia, but they're only as good as their enforcement. I've called for a law enforcement agency that's dedicated to voting law enforcement. I want all elections that are certifiable to be audited by outside third-party entities, just like we do our financial reports. And I want to get rid of the mini machines. Look, if we can't trust government on this type of situation or trust our governor, I don't know how we trust him on all the rest of it. I mean, this is a primary, basic, fundamental building block of our democratic republic.
We are talking to former U.S. Senator David Perdue, the front runner against Governor Brian Kemp to get the Republican nomination in the primaries coming up next month. You've heard the critics say it. You're called, and I'll use nice words, you're called a puppet of Donald Trump. You're called a lot of bad words that I can't say on this show. Would you consider yourself an extension of Donald Trump?
Well, the people who are saying those types of things, as you well know, really don't know me. I have a 40-year business career of successes and turnarounds and creating thousands of jobs. I certainly supported the agenda of Donald Trump. I helped author it. We helped get it implemented that created the best economic turnaround in U.S. history. I'm proud to have his endorsement in Georgia. The thing that I will tell people here is that we will support all the conservative values, the same principles that created that economic turnaround. The things you see being done in Florida right now are very consistent with that, and I'm very proud, again, to have his endorsement.
You've heard the critics say it. Here's a guy who could not beat Jon Ossoff. Why is he running and dividing the Republican Party?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question. You know, I hear the governor touting that all the time, but here's the truth. We did beat Jon Ossoff by 90,000 votes in the November election, even with all the intransigence that's now coming out. That's more than double the victory that Brian Kemp had over Stacey Abrams. And by the way, that was when Brian Kemp had the Trump endorsement. He will not have that this November. I do not believe Brian Kemp can beat Stacey Abrams because he can't unite the party. But let me go further. I would not have been in a runoff if Brian Kemp had not caved in and allowed radical Democrats to take over the election. We know that consent decree totally invalidated voter ID on absentee ballots. With in-person voting, that was 3.5 million of the 5 million people that voted, more than any other time in Georgia history. 3.5 million voted in person with photo ID, voter ID. I won that by 400,000 votes. Absentee ballots, about 1.5 million votes, where there was no voter ID. I lost that by 300,000 votes. So this is where I want the investigation to go. The evidence is there in this court case. It's compelling. This evidence is being suppressed by our governor right now. He really doesn't want this to come out. We see that right now in the data that's coming out about the cell phone data, the ballot trafficking and ballot harvesting. We have video evidence. We have cell phone evidence. This is not conspiratorial stuff. This is actual, true fact. And it's going to eventually come out because people in Georgia are going to demand the truth.
It's word on the street. We are talking to former U.S. Senator David Perdue, who is trying to be the Republican nominee for governor to go up against Stacey Abrams. Let's move to my part of town, which is Buckhead. It's really intriguing to me. Why is the Buckhead City movement, pro or con, so relevant in this gubernatorial race?
Well, I personally support the move that they have initiated there to create a city to determine their own political direction and to take charge of their own safety. Look, 5 areas in the state requested this. The governor allowed 4 of them to do it, and he blocked Buckhead from doing it. In fact, he called in the debate the other night again. He said, I'm going to keep my powder dry on that. Well, what that means is he's not going to do anything to support it. There are many reasons why the people in Buckhead should have this vote, but the biggest one is that crime is out of control. Crime in Atlanta is up 40%. Rapes and murders are up 40%. The murder rate in Atlanta is higher than it is in Chicago. We have more illegal immigrants in Georgia than they do in Arizona, more than when Brian Kemp was elected. I just think Brian Kemp's been asleep at the switch here, and we now have a full-blown crisis on our hands. It highlights the governor's the resistance that he has, I think, comes from his ties to the big corporate donors downtown that really do not want Buckhead City to determine their own direction. I feel very strongly about this. The people should absolutely be able to determine their own direction.
How does the state of Georgia look with you, David Perdue, as governor?
Well, pretty different, actually. And I appreciate this question. I wish we could get these in the debates. But first of all, voting laws will be enforced. The state income tax will be eliminated. The woke mob will be out of our schools, and criminals will be prosecuted. It's pretty simple. Right now, not one single person has been investigated or prosecuted in any of this voter fraud that even the governor admits now occurred. So this is what I'm talking about. If people lose confidence that the law is going to be enforced, then you have a crisis on your hands, and that's what we have right now in Georgia. So these are very demonstrative changes, and I think that you're going to see that the polls are not picking up the energy and intensity that's out there for this type of change.
I've got one more question for you, David Perdue. Let's just say you don't win the primaries. Will you encourage your supporters to back Brian Kemp?
Well, I'm pretty adamant. I feel very confident we're going to win this election. I mean, I felt the same way back in 2014 when the polls had us down dramatically going into that election. We won that dramatically, and we held on and beat the Democrats by more than 8 points. Everybody in the country had written us off. So I feel very confident that we continue to get our message out these next few weeks. Early voting starts next week. I encourage everybody to get out and vote early. But yes, I have said publicly that I will support the winner of this primary, regardless of who it is, because my number one objective is to make sure Stacey Abrams does not take over this state.
And obviously you feel like you are the one who can stop Stacey Abrams from becoming governor of the state of Georgia.
Well, here's the logic, and it's a great way to end the conversation, I think. The only reason I got in this race is that Brian Kemp has divided our party. To win in Georgia, you have to get regular Republicans, you have to get the women in the suburbs who are newly moved into the state, and you have to get the Trump supporters. I just don't see how Kemp is going to do that, given that he has denied any wrongdoing in the election. He has kicked sand in the president's face for the last 2 years. I don't see how he's going to unite the party. When I was running in 2020 for re-election in the United States Senate, we did unite the party. We produced 2.5 million votes, almost 500,000 more votes than Brian Kemp got against Stacey Abrams in 2018. So I think the evidence is very clear that I'm the only one of the two that can unite the party to beat Abrams in the fall.
But can you unite the Atlanta Braves to do a little better than they've started off?
Hey, remember where they were this time last year? They have a way of surprising everybody. I tell people all the time, we got the best port in the country, the best airport, the number one football team, and the number one baseball team, and we're going to continue to have that all the way through this season. I love them.
Thank you, former U.S. Senator David Perdue, for coming on Word on the Street. We certainly appreciate your time.
Thanks so much.